Hey everyone, welcome to another G News update. Well, today I'm broadcasting to you from inside the Greenbelt. So I'm actually inside native New Zealand bush here, and I can proudly say that every tree behind me was lovingly planted at some stage by my grandfather, who did a big restoration project on the island and helped to bring back all the bird life by planting native trees many decades ago. But today's news was really all about Chris Hipkins and his media rounds and a number of other topics, but let's just start there. One of the things that you probably noticed when you looked at the news was what was not covered in this morning's news. And what was not covered was the People's Select Committee and the Project 10 theft of $12.8 billion from about 180,000 low-paid workers, low-paid women mostly, and that funded Budget 2025. And really, it was reprehensible. It was extremely bad behaviour. It was very bad faith. Now, normally a topic like that was so egregious would have gotten more detail. In most countries, I think we probably would have had a public broadcasting service that would have looked into it. But the closest we've got here is Radio New Zealand, and TVNZ, they did a brief coverage of this, and last night on the news, what led was a self-marketing poll which put the National Party on 34%, which is a bit of an outlier really with other polls, but when you go back to the previous Varian polls, they seem stuck on 34% with National. They also repeatedly only have 1,002 people in their sample space, so that exact number is always met each time they do a Varian poll. Anyway, the point that I wanted to make was that that was the end of the coverage when it came to the People's Select Committee. It was a one-night affair. The coverage came something like quarter of an hour into the news bulletin, so it wasn't treated like a big news item, not like a self-sourcing poll, to get bums on seats. And tonight we'll hear again more about this poll from Mikey Sherman. There'll be some question that was put to everybody, possibly about something like a capital gains tax, something aimed at labour possibly, or the cost of living. But we'll see something about the poll before we see anything more from Television New Zealand concerning the People's Select Committee and all of that pay equity theft of $12.8 billion. So that's kind of where the news is at. It's about sort of self-sourcing marketing. These polls, they're kind of products, really, marketing products that are shopped around and shipped about exclusively. Look at our poll, our exclusive poll, you've heard it here on our channel, that kind of shit. So we saw most of the news this morning regarding Chris Hipkins being about this poll. And what did you make of the poll? And on Radio New Zealand, Ingrid Hipkiss interviewed Chris Hipkins, and she led with, can I still call you the leader of the opposition? Because Chloe Swarbrick is saying she's leading the policy agenda anyway, so are you really the leader of the opposition? So this is the kind of thing that our press gallery are about. They're about creating wedge issues when Labour catching up or in front, probably mostly in front in terms of most of the recent polls. The party of the few, the party of the wealthy, the party of the revenue for many commercial organisations. But this is Radio New Zealand, and they're going there into a wedge issue straight up with Chris Hipkins, and he just said to Ingrid Hipkiss, oh, well, that's a very provocative beginning, the way to start the interview, Ingrid. And she just popped over from there, and he just said, look, the Greens can speak for themselves. As far as I'm concerned, Christopher Luxon made some very big promises when he went into being the leader of the National Party and into that election in 2023, and he's broken them. He hasn't delivered, and no matter what kind of mumbo jumbo we might hear from him, corporate news speak, it's just not helping anybody, and people are sick of it. They've waited and waited, and this whole growth agenda, you know, tying all of their success and all of their bags to some projections from the Reserve Bank that said GDP would come. So, you know, hitch a ride, get in the slipstream, pretend, you know, that it was you that grew the economy. Do that. And that was basically the plan from Christopher, you know, Luxon, was to sort of pretend, in the same way that he pretends that he and Nicola Willis have been the main factors when it comes to a decline in inflation. And it's just dishonest. You know, we go over and over again how he just continues to make these false statements in front of these same people, you know, the press gallery, and none of them challenge him, because that's how fake news is spread, when nobody in the media bothers to continue to challenge a lying, dishonest Prime Minister. So, you know, you've got these people coming on to my page now that are trying to make out that we've got this big debt problem, and that Treasury, you know, the gospel truth when it comes to everything, it's just whatever Treasury says is now the gospel, because they wrote this report that tentatively said that Labor had spent too much in the second half of COVID and didn't pull it back as much as Treasury would have liked. But as you know, Labor did pull it back. There's no real detail, there's no follow-up. This is really just building a narrative for people that, you know, don't look into things. And yeah, so there was a actual pullback. There was $8 or $9 billion of savings found in 2023. There was a reduction in spending of operational budgets into the future for the rest of that period when Grant Robertson was the finance minister. So, you know, it's wrong to make the claims that are made. We also saw, you know, Nicola Willis flip-flopping around, you know, Treasury forecasts are wrong when it comes to GDP. They got it wrong, plainly wrong, she said. On the 26th of March 2025, you can go back in the record and look in Hansard in Parliament, and there she is saying, yes, Treasury plainly got their forecasts wrong. But then on about the 6th of August this year, she's saying, oh, well, Treasury were plainly right in their forecasts before the election. So which one was it? And we had that discussion. Not only that, but it wasn't that long ago, back in late 2024, that it surfaced that Treasury was telling Nicola Willis to trim back on her tax cuts, that the amount of the effect of her tax cuts on inflation would be pretty small, but you could trim it back. Now, the way in which the media on the right wing have actually taken this Treasury paper and amplified it and turned it into sort of like the gospel truth and gone on and on for days on end, like Kerry Woodham talking on and on as if here is the evidence, the hard data, when it's not, none of that. It's kind of flimsy, it's kind of comparative. It doesn't say we were the worst. It says the United States spent a lot more during the COVID period. They were a lot more stimulatory. That we were pretty much the same as Australia. That we're pretty much the same as the United Kingdom. So were they all wrong as well? But, you know, no one carries that argument forward. They just go, oh, look, here, pull out New Zealand, single them out, blame Labor. This vindicates it. And this is what Ingrid Hipkiss was trying to put in front of Chris Hipkins again this morning, because this is a campaign that must go on. Whereas, as I pointed out, you're not going to see a campaign on Project 10, you're not going to see a campaign on 180,000 low-paid women that have actually been robbed of their pay equity. You're not going to see the priorities of the news people actually be right. You're going to see Ingrid Hipkiss playing these kind of games like wedges between Greens and Labor, and this kind of bullshit about, you know, Treasury vindicating a false story while Christopher Luxon lies in her face and she doesn't actually challenge him. So Chippy was really cool. You know, he was just basically, look, this guy broke all his promises. You can't trust him. We are focused on houses, jobs, and we're focused on real action when it comes to this cost of living crisis, and actually doing something instead of just talking about the economy. Let's just do something to help people. And yeah, so, and we're also focused on health. And if you look at what's been said recently, we've only got a third of the cardiologists we need. And What's Simeon Brown doing about it? Well, Simeon Brown is not helping, is he? Simeon Brown's not going to get you any more cardiologists. The price of seeing a GP is still going up everywhere, despite the fact that the GPs are getting more capitation funding. We're seeing increasingly that going to a doctor is more something for wealthy people and not for the middle classes anymore, as privatisation and Simeon Brown take that all away from us using the flimsiest of excuses. But gradually it gets worse and worse until, you know, some people are paying $100 to see a GP. Anyway, what we also heard was that when it comes to heart attacks and early deaths, Maori and Pacific peoples are actually twice as impacted, more likely to get this kind of problem, and also more likely not to seek treatment. And that can have something to do with structural racism built into the health system that Davey Boy helps to perpetuate. Or it can be sort of simply things like a lot of people of Maori descent live in rural areas, and you know, you're going to have to fly into Auckland or something to get your angiogram done, and you know, so who's going to do that? Well, a lot of people just go, well, look, no, you know, I can't be bothered going that far to get treatment, so they don't get the treatment. So this is all kind of in the news this morning. But I think another thing that we should look at in terms of priorities of news is what was Audrey Young doing today? I mean, she's supposed to be kind of like one of those senior political commentators. Well, what she was doing was she had written a love letter basically to the Burleigh police minister. I remember when Claire Trevett and Audrey were glowing over how burly Mark Mitchell is, and what a great specimen he was, what a great manly man, a masculine man, unlike Paul Tor Williams, who just didn't kind of fit in their stereotype. You know, it was a kind of a masculine job, not a woman couldn't do it kind of thing, you know, women are weak. Well, this is the kind of stuff that was coming out of these people, and Audrey Young today wrote a love letter. I have to say it's the puffiest PR kind of magazine culture piece I've seen in a long time. There's this photograph of Mark Mitchell in the Herald, and he's basically about 30 years younger. His hair is dark, and he's got a dog, because everyone loves a dog. So if you're going to sell a politician and kind of help them somehow with their popularity, this is what you have to do. You have to really dig deep and suck the PR stuff up here. So there's this picture of Mark looking at his best with his dog, and then there's all these pictures of him in his army fatigues, because he's a commando, he's a man, he's an action hero, he's someone we need to look up to. And so anyway, it was really quite vomit-inducing, sort of slimy PR. You know, it doesn't get much more sycophantic and unneutral than this one piece. Now, we don't see this kind of PR being given by Audrey to too many other people around the tracks from different parts of the political spectrum. But anyway, apparently old Mark Mitchell is in a bit of pain. He's got some kind of problem, maybe some old injury. Anyway, we're all supposed to feel sorry for Mark right now. And so this is the kind of stuff that's going on in our media, but nothing about pay equity, okay? So nothing on the political pages about 180,000 low-paid women and workers who had their $12.8 billion stolen from them wrongly by Christopher Luxon and Project 10, and all of the people that plotted and planned to do that in secrecy, under urgency, without any regard to proper processes, with retrospective lawmaking, all sorts of aspects to this that were just bloody awful and unacceptable, and the newspapers don't give a shit. They just basically move on. And they're more interested in talking about, you know, what's Chloe Swarbrick going to do there. Anyway, Christopher Hipkins, he basically said, look, under a government that I lead, the finance minister will be Barbara Edmonds, period, end of story. And he thought that this carry on where you get a lot more of the sort of the tail wagging the dog with small parties that we're seeing at the moment isn't going to happen in a government that he leads, because he didn't think that that's how MMP should work. And I think he's probably right. I think we'd expect there to be some kind of proportionality to the government. We shouldn't have 80% of the decision making and lead being done by Davey Boy along with Winston, and only 20% of it being Luxon, who says, look, I'll have to get back to you, I can't really comment, I don't want to get ahead of the process, I better talk to these guys. And then lo and behold, out comes Davey Boy saying, oh, Hamas will have to demilitarize before this government that he leads will actually allow Palestine to be a state. So in other words, he's sort of saying, I'm going to block it, and because they won't agree to that, then it will never happen. Now, New Zealand is probably one of the last countries now in the UN to actually come to the position where we say, look, this is should be the case that Palestine is a state. If we don't do it now, it's never going to happen because of the creeping settlements, the ongoing bullshit between America and Israel that gradually just makes things worse, pretending all along that it's actually an honest broker and that it's doing something about peace and a two-state solution. So being part of that pretend game comes kind of like to an end now when, you know, you've got this open air prison where 2 million people are being starved every minute of the day. And so Winston Peters is going to sit on his hands until September, looking for the most popular decision so that he can kind of brown nose up to people at the UN. A UN annual General Assembly that Christopher Luxon will not attend because he's not a leader's ass and he is out of here. He's just such a... It was awful yesterday. I mean, I felt personally embarrassed as well as quite furious, really, that he was so inept. He was unable to answer any questions about the process of coming to a decision. Why couldn't just decide this on the spot, you know, and make a captain's call is beyond everybody. It's just, guy's useless. He needs the permission, he needs to genuflect to Winston, he needs to bow down. And this is the kind of thing that we are seeing, and people who voted for change didn't see that coming, did they? National Party, I mean, look at you guys, they're just taking the piss out of you, you know. Who did you vote for? You voted for ACT and Winston. That's who you voted for. Any ACT for National is an ACT vote, right? So you're voting for ACT, may as well forget about National. They're just not even there. So so we saw all these kind of really bad games in the press this morning, and I basically just wanted to sit here in the bush and kind of communicate to you that our press has basically got it all the wrong way round. They're really looking for drama, they're looking for clicks, they're looking for that conflict. So can they actually cause, you know, a bit of a conflict here? Can they drum up some discord? Can they be provocative? Can they get attention? Can they win the ratings war? Can they boast and get an award? Can they make an impact? These are the sorts of things, not can we just tell the truth? Can we get to the bottom of the story? Can we investigate what really happened with pay equity? Can we talk to the nurses? Can we talk to the teachers? Can we talk to someone like Dame Sylvia Cartwright? Can we just kind of like get our priorities right? You know, do we care at all apart from money and making money? Well, probably not. It's all been, you know, watered down so badly, which I suppose is part of the reason why many of you are now even listening to someone like me, because I'm just reflecting back what you already know, and this is the case. But here we are in the bush. It doesn't get better than this. This is New Zealand bush. It's got my grandfather's signature all around me here. Yeah, it's probably sort of somewhere in the trees. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I believe Parliament is back today, so I'll be bringing you the highlights from Parliament today, and I'll talk to you all again as soon as possible. See you later. Bye.
Welcome to G News, the good news.